All right, so I wanted to create a full YouTube video going step by step how I have managed to have auth0 and Wappler working together, but I'm not gonna be able to get that video done probably in the next couple of weeks or so. In hindsight, I should have took the time that I took writing the article and publishing on Medium to make this video, but um, here we are. So I'm just going to go over a brief overview of how the backend and the front end look, so that way this could serve as a supplement for those of you who are following the documentation and Medium, just to have an idea for the backend work. So I'm not going to start off with the Medium overview. um, so what that look like would be the Medium overview over here. So this is the article that I published on Medium, right? But I'm not gonna start from going step by step because I want to make this video at least 30 minutes long. So I'm just gonna jump into what the backend look like, then go over back to the Medium article if I have enough time. So here's what the Wappler overview of the front end look like. So basically, this is what this site look like, right? And I'm gonna give you an overview of. So this is about, for those of you who never heard of auth0 before, it's basically a identity provider, right, as a service. So instead of building out your own login registration sign up system, you can just outsource that to auth0. So here is a quick overview of what the flow look like. um I have it over here in incognito's mode. So basically we have a Node.js app right running on my Docker desktop here with an image that I built for this stuff. So um, essentially this would be your index, right? Your home page. So there's no security um, behind this right now. It's just public. Anyone can view it, browse around. If this was your your index page, right? Over here I have a drop down. You can go to your profile. There's a registration and a sign up button as well. So if you go to your profile, you can't really go to your profile, right? Because you're not authenticated. So in a way, you have to get authenticated. So I'm just gonna turn on my developer console here so you can see what that look like. So let's go sign in, and there it takes you to you know your login page. So you can either sign up if you want, use simple email and a password for signing up, right? Or you can use sign in with Google, GitHub, Facebook, whatever other source of sign up you add to the auth0 dashboard, right? When you're creating your tenant. So that's what that would look like, right? So let's go and log in. I believe I have a user already. I'm just gonna choose this guy here that I save. Then I'm gonna hit continue, and take a little bit of time. So what happened now? Auth0 send over a parameter tagged down to your callback endpoint. So here in the Wappler row, this is what I created, right? And then auth0 just give it a code and with a string, right there. So that's your code, right? And essentially what we do, we take this code and send it to the backend and give it to our API endpoints to authorize, with this code. So essentially, here's the endpoint that I created in the Wappler. So that's what that look like. It's this endpoint, auth0 code parameter get code, and then I'm grabbing the code by assigning a um a query parameter that I created in Wappler, right? So it's giving us this code, and if we look at it, you know, right now we have some status saying, the request hasn't been sent yet. So what I have done is just to use this go to dashboard here to to essentially kind of like generate that other flow, right? And the reason why I have this go to dashboard here, this is one of the workaround where I essentially don't want to put like the Wappler security restrict on this callback endpoint, because what will happen is it will end up having the Wappler security run before auth0 actually has time to do the code on the back end, right? Which is what really happened here if you look at it. So so now we just have to initiate one more time by saying, hey, go to dashboard. And for some reason that didn't work. So let's do this one more time. Maybe my internet is slow. So, oh, now we got a status 200. So if we go over here, we should get some token. I'm not seeing the token right here. So let's try signing in one more time to refresh that. Okay. So now we're getting somewhere. So anyway, so here we are. We got some 200. It sent us back the token, right? And as you can see, it sent us a token that we're gonna use to grab the user info, right? Which is another endpoint that auth0 provide for us. And we also, once we get the token, we essentially take that token and pass it over to the get user info endpoint, right? Where we said, hey, give us the email, the nickname, and the profile picture, right? And you can see also it's telling us what record this is in the database, right? So as I said, this is just a quick overview. I don't want to go over 30 minutes long. So essentially that's how it operates, right? And as you can see, I'm just going to show you how all this work on the Wappler backend. And as I said before, this route right here does not have the security restrict on it because we don't want that. So essentially, now that we're authorized, we just hit this button to go to our dashboard, and now we're inside of our dashboard, right? So from here, you know, we're in, and essentially this would be like where you put other stuff and what have you. So that's kind of like a quick overview of like how that portion of it work, right? And obviously you can sign out once you finish doing what you're doing, and it reroute you back to the home page. And once we go back to try and go back to our profile again, we should not be able to go back in our profile because it's we sign out. And in order to do that again, let me just pull this back up so you can see what's going on. We have to go log in again. And because there's some cookies set from the OAuth and what have you, essentially once we hit sign in, we're just going to go right back in. We're going to go to our dashboard and boom. So that's kind of like the quick flow of it. And then we can sign out again. If we try to go back to profile, we can't. So we just gotta have to keep authorizing each time to go back into our dashboard. And once we in our dashboard profile, we can obviously go to other endpoints that are protected as well, like status protected, yada yada yada. And for example, if I copy stats here, and if I was supposed to sign out, and if I try to go to stats, paste it back, it should reroute me back to the homepage. So that's OAuth working for us um, in terms of our identity provider, right? So yeah, pretty cool. So I'm gonna close. Actually, let's just jump over to Wappler. So now here in Wappler, I'm just gonna have a show you what that look like. So to pull this off, what I have done, I have a main template which I created over here in page. So if we go to layouts, So there's a main layout, a home layout, and a art layout, right? So essentially the main layout is where we have our dashboard. The home layout essentially is where we have our home page, right? So as you can see, let me just click on this guy up here so you can see what's going on. So that is our home layout, or that is our main layout. And as you can see, we have the security restrict right here. So this is handling the security restrict, admin access. And the main, if we go on the main, we don't have one. We didn't put one there because we don't want that to have any problem. And essentially that's what that looked like on our homepage. This is the template that's running the non-restricted public view. And then we have our authenticated layout, and as well that doesn't have any server restriction, right? And the callback URL that we use here, as you can see, let me click here. It's tied to the home layout because the home layout doesn't have any restriction. The only layout that have restriction is the main layout, which is what we're essentially building out all our restricted page on, right? So if we create a new page over here, once we go create a new page, it's going to ask us what template we want. We're just going to choose the main template, main template if we want to restrict those content, and anything we don't want to restrict, we put it on our home. So that's publicly accessible, if that makes sense. So now let's dive quickly into the backend. So let's just break it down from the main layout, which is this access, admin access, and then this admin access. Here's what that looked like essentially. So we have our admin access. We'll just have a condition that's once the user is authorized, we're just grabbing the identity from the Wappler security login, right? And it said, hey, if there's identity available, I just put like a set value. You can put whatever you want, say identity, okay, right? And then if not, if there's no identity picked up in the application, then we're gonna go to security restrict. I'm just gonna send them back to the index page, the home template, right? And if it's a case where they were authorized but they have the wrong permission, then we might send them to like some forbidden page or some other page, right? However you want to handle that, that's up to you. So now if we look at let's go back to our main. So now we also have our query parameter that we set. So here's what those query parameter look like. It's just one code. So we'll just name this code so we can pick up the same value that auth0 send over back, which their parameter is code as well, essentially, which coming from when we had so hopefully we're logged out right now. No, we're not. So if I logged out, essentially when we had sign in, auth0 send back this query parameter, which is code, and essentially we just name our code as well in the Wappler app, just to be consistent with the auth0 query parameter, right? So that's one call out right there that you should remember. So now the server connect that we're using to handle all of this on the front end. So here's the server connect, right? And it's just tied to this server connect, which we're exchanging the token to. So this is what our flow look like. So but before I go into that, so let's just focus on the front end for a second. So we have the auth0 code. We're sending the code that we pick up on our front end through a get value back to the back end. So we're sending that through this get value up here. So we're sending it back to this guy right here. So we're picking up on the front end, send it to the back end, and then we'll just say, hey, once we get it, I'll just do a set value to pick it up again, right? No biggie right there. And the reason why I'm doing this is so I can have some global way of handling it if I want to do some global, so kind of like thing, right? So once we pick that up, we send it to the backend. We also, once we authorize as well, we want to pick up the identity that we get, right? So if we go back to once we had gets the 200 value. Um, anyways, this is not gonna work unless I redo it. So anyway, actually, let's just redo it. So let me just, so I can show you. I'm just gonna reopen a new incognito tab, paste that in, hit enter. So if you recall, once we had initially run the flow, right, and we logged in, we get our code, right? And for some reason, the first login, I keep getting this invalid error. Anyways, so let's initiate this one more time. Okay, so here we go. So once this as once this, so once we trigger that sign in flow and hit enter and sign in, right, all of that stuff take place in this layout, right? So auth0 send us the code, we grab the code, we then send the code to this API, and we just grab it, this code right here from this value, right? So this guy is grabbing from this guy, right? So we'll just grab that, and this is one of the parameter that this token API requires, right, for it to authorize the whole user to get that token. So once that we get this code right here, we send it to the backend, we send it to this guy right here, this token endpoint, which in the Wappler we call this guy API request token. So we send it, it give us a token, give us this long token, and then when we get this token, we say, hey, we need this token to get the user info. So we have our a condition that we say, hey, once this have a 200 access token, okay, let's call the user OAuth endpoint, and we're going to take the bearer token. So it gave us the bearer token. So we take it and then we say, okay, get the user info. So it gives us the user info. And in the parameter, we're just saying, hey, we want the email and the password. So what that look like on the Wappler endpoint is you have to actually go define that user data that you want. So I went ahead and just kind of like define that user data right here. So what that would look like, essentially, you will go over to, trying to find that link. Let's just go back here, cancel. Just need to find this guy right here. Let me see if I have it open here on some tab. Just gonna, yeah. So this is the endpoint you want to go to get your your JSON to request whatever you want to get back in your in your response, right? So I kind of had a little bit of time figuring out what endpoint this was. So it was actually on the part two of the documentation here that I written. That's why I was having a hard time in the beginning there. So anyway, so we get the beer token, we request the user info, and then here we want to define the API schema. So if I put this over here on the screen, so here's where you'll actually go define it. So what you'll do, you'll go to this endpoint over here, and actually this endpoint, you'll go to this endpoint over here, and then you can grab this whole thing if you want, or you can pick whatever you want. So in my case, I end up just picking the nickname, the email, And what all else did I pick over here? So I had the sub, the nickname, name, picture, date, email, email verify. Yep. So those are what I had picked up. And as you can see, it's all near email verify. So I just end up just, all you gotta do is you just do this. You will copy that. You'll go to Wappler, and you can just do that if you want to get back all of those stuff, and then you will just hit process and then hit save. So that's how you will define your schema for that, right? And I also did the same for this guy when I had defined the schema that I want here. So I had already know that, hey, you know what, based on the response, I was gonna get these guy up here, which I had listed in documentation. So yeah, so moving on. So that's kind of like what happened when we had run that that API in our Wappler app, right? We asked for the token, it gave us a token and a bearer, and then we said, hey, you know what? Let's use that bearer token. Let's use that bearer token, which I just like bearer, and then grab went and grabbed the value from the API over here. So what that looked like essentially would be just like going over here and just grabbing the access token here, which on our front end is this guy right here. And then once we have that, we'll just pass it to this user info endpoint to get user info. And what that looked like on the Wappler side is this guy. We're just passing it in, we define our query, and then hence we have it. So now we said, okay, we have our database, which we had already told auth0 to say for us. So we just say, hey, you know what, go query that database, and we're going to get the password and the email, right? And we'll have a condition saying, hey, if the email is equal to the get user endpoint that we have set up, which how do I move this up? Which is this guy right here. That's our condition. We said, hey, you know what, get the email that was sent back in that response. And the email that was sent back in that response was obviously one that we had defined in our response, and we're saying, hey, give us that email, right? So once that happened, we get back that data, and then we say, okay, we have a condition again, and we say, hey, you know what, if the data validates return true with the data that corresponds with this flow right here, we have our security login, which we're just getting the email from the API, and we're getting the password from the API, and of course we're using our security provider, right? And then we say, okay, if that's the case, then go log in, right? And then we also have a second condition here, because this first condition is nested, as you can see, and then this is like a separate condition down here that we're just saying, hey, once this flow run and everything okay, let's pick up the security identity and let's just query the user one more time. And this time we want the user email, the role, and the tenant. And that is also based on the identity that we get back in the global, right? Which is what we had set up here in the global, where we have just our security identities just in the global ready, and we have outputted, right? So essentially, yes. So we had defined a security identity in a global, but long before that, let's just backtrack a little bit. We have our security provider, which we had already set up to the same database that we have set up in the OAuth. So what that look like is to say, hey, we want the identity to be the email, we want the username to be the email, and for password that, and then we also have some access level. So here we have our admin. This is just role equal whatever is write and read. And read and write here doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, if you're in the to admin dashboard you cannot write, or if you're in the user dashboard you cannot write. It's just a routing mechanism here to reroute to a different endpoint, right? So where admin could see the user dashboard as well as the admin dashboard, right? So admin can log into a user dashboard. That's the whole purpose of this. And then for user, it's just a role of read. Same thing again. It does not mean that you cannot read or write to your dashboard or submit any form or whatever is in your dashboard, right? It's just a way of routing. That's what I'm using it here for. So that's what the security provider looks like. So anyway, back to our whole flow here. This is the meat of like how we're integrating Wappler with auth0, right? So yeah, so that's kind of like a quick overview of the Wappler part of it. And obviously we have our logout as well, which is just our security logout. And once you have defined your security provider, all of this stuff is just a walk in the park with Wappler, right? And there's some other, this also is another thing that I set up, and it's just like an output of the Wappler security provider. Because once the other workaround that we have, once we're over here in our endpoint, right, we have our callback URL. And the problem with that is once we're on this, under our authorization has taken place, right, and we have access to our dashboard, right, once we said, hey, go to dashboard over here, essentially what will happen if we don't have this stuff walking with us to the other dashboard, then we're going to lose the ability to validate based on the identity, right? Even though Wappler itself had already set those identity, right? We need a way to like walk it across sessions. So hence I just like, hey, once that identity is found, pick it up and let's just walk it across all all the layouts, right? Whether that's my main, home, or whatever. Just in case if we wanted to print out the user name or whatever information we want to print out, we have it across session, right? And that's so I kind of handle that. So as you can see as well, we also have some cookie that we had set to pick up the code just to walk it across other page, right? And we also have the Wappler identity, which is output here, and we also have this other identity that we set in the global as well to pick up that. So as you can see, once the first authorization take place on this callback URL, then we'll grab the Wappler identity that's been spit out from the login, which is back to this guy here. Once we authorize, it's going to spit out the identity, and we're just saying, hey, once that gets spit out, we want it in a global and we want to grab it. So hence we name it over here. We name it, identity global. We're grabbing it, yada yada. Because right now we can see that it's false right here because the page load and what have you hasn't picked it up yet, but we know that it's there. So we have to find a way to pick it up. So once we go to the page that have the restrict on it, and this is the whole workaround, right? Because we don't want to put a security restrict on the callback because it's going to run before auth0 send us back this code, right? So we have to find a workaround, and this is a workaround. We just have a page that we don't put the security restrict on. We just put it on the main, and then hence the button here to say go to dashboard, right? So once we go to dashboard now, as you can see, we're in a new session, it reloads, but we still have no or variable that we set picks it up because we set it to pick it up on page load in in our um in our little thing right here, so we set it to just output it right here, so it's picking it up and it's spitting it out back for us on the front end, right? So we're walking it across all pages, right, just by running that. So it picks it up, and that's how we so it's if it's a case where no, you wanted to take this, if this was a username or whatever you set in the database, if you wanted to grab the username and display it right here, you could, but obviously this is a static value, so essentially I could have print the email right here if I want, but that wouldn't be good. But in your user database, you'd want to have another